Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let me get my hat on and get this started. Alright, first question. Hey Jason, I'm a big fan, been watching you for years. I have a son that is in MMA. He is 12 years old and we started hex bar deadlifting. He is getting pretty strong and I was wondering if there is a weight that he should top off at to remain safe. How heavy is too heavy for a preteen, young teen? Is there any lift of the big three that he should not trade heavy on? Thank you for your help. All right, he's preteen, so he hasn't really finished puberty, so I'm going to say you need to avoid training to failure, basically. It's no reason he can't lift moderately heavy, but you're obviously an experienced lifter. You've been doing this for a while, so you have some idea of how this stuff works. Try to keep him in the 50% max range. Meaning if you know he could probably lift 150 pounds on that hex bar deadlift, have him work with 75, do 5-6 reps, or you know what, better yet, have him train for speed. Have him just master technique and lift it explosively. Weights that are around 50% of his max he could do triples with. Not a problem. The main thing is that you just don't want to load him up too heavy. And people who haven't fully finished puberty yet, as a general rule, I recommend you don't put them above about 50% intensity. But that doesn't mean they can't do decent volume with good form in there or any of that. But the thing you've got to remember, he's not going to gain much muscle. So doing things like training to failure, trying to do anything that's going to be a high workload, high volume, anything isn't going to be that useful because his muscle gains are going to be minimal. What you're doing at this time, you're just helping him strengthen his bones a little bit, get faster. He's going to gain some muscle, but it's not going to be like after he finishes puberty. But you know what? Another year or two, he's probably going to be there. And if you have him just master technique, get faster, get more explosive, he should be fine. The other thing to remember, keep him doing a fair amount of upper body pulling. I know squat, bench, deadlift, stuff like that are popular, the big three. But you do want to make sure that his upper back and everything gets strong too, so that you balance that out. So maybe having learn to do some chin-ups would probably be what I would throw in there in addition to that. But the main thing is that people need to remember, you're trying to make sure you don't slip a physio plates for younger lifters like that, which, you know, isn't that common, but it can happen. You have them start lifting really heavy, that's the problem. But, you know, use your best judgment in gauging where that rough 50% is of his max. Have him work there. Don't let him take anything to failure. And anytime his form starts breaking down or he loses focus and gets sloppy, it's time to stop and take a break. You know, you could go ahead and end the training session because he's obviously bored, not focused. That's not ideal. You don't want that to happen. And that's really what you're ideally trying to avoid there, is just bad form or lifting something that's going to be heavy enough that he's going to have a grinder use bad technique, and that's how injuries happen with younger lifters like that. But I think what you're doing is very positive for him for the MMA, and I would focus more upon just doing the explosive speed work with good technique. I think that's going to help him more than anything. All right, next question. Hey man, I've been running 5x5 3 days a week for a while. However, I have nagging problems in various places. I'm getting physio, but would it be worthwhile backing down my reps and frequency down? I was thinking 2 or maybe still 3 days a week, but only one work set, possibly sticking to that to avoid further injuries. And could that still give me decent gains? Cheers, mate. This is a long-term poster who wrote this. The guy's pretty decently big, decently strong. This is not, you know, some noob with only a year of lifting experience. Yeah, you know, that's what happens, brother. You're a pretty big guy already and have been for a while, as far as I remember. You posted on here a couple years back. You were pretty big back then. 5x5, like straight 5x5s, can start to get really tough on the big lifts once you're an advanced lifter. You just probably might be overreaching. And yeah, if you wanted to, you're getting some nagging pains, maybe some tendonitis, joints starting to hurt. It's time to back down the volume a little bit. That's fine. You could go down to 1 set of 5 on all these lifts for a little while if deloads aren't working for you. It's probably just your overall tonnage is too high. So yeah, you could back down and do 1 set for a while. And yeah, of course you can still make gains on 1 set. People need to understand that. It's possible to come in once a week and do 1 really heavy set on an exercise and not come back to the gym for 7 days. You could come in and do several exercises once a week and do 1 set and make gains off of that. It's just that they're going to be really slow gains, and that's what people need to understand. Progressive overload will give you gains no matter what. It's just a matter of ideal training or good training is going to give you faster gains. But backing down volume, backing down workload, all of that only slows gains a little bit. It doesn't stop gains from happening. As long as you're getting progressive overload, you're going to make gains. As long as you can every now and then add a rep or add, 3, 4, 5 pounds to the bar, whenever you're able to, you're going to continue to make progress. It's just not going to be ideal. But for someone who's already big and strong, you're starting to get nagging aches and pains. You're also going to have a lot of those pains and overuse injuries and inflammation and everything go away. So that's just what you personally have to balance out yourself and figure out what's right for you. All right, next question. What's your opinion on the glute activation work done by Bret Contreras, specifically in the context of improving strength and athletic performance? Necessary or overkill? Man, you know what? Bret Contreras does catch some flack for some of this stuff. There are things I like about him and things I don't like about him. I do appreciate the fact that he is obviously getting into serious exercise science. I don't know if he's finished his PhD yet. Last time I checked, I knew he was doing his graduate work. He does provide some interesting insights to the community. I do appreciate what he does. However, obviously not everything he does is correct or helpful. And, he's known for being the glute guy. And yeah, I think he does overkill on the glute stuff. And I mean, he got slammed really hard for when he did a powerlifting meet. Finally, a raw powerlifting meet. I remember people slamming him for this, and they're like, wow, for a glute guy, you can't squat. Because I think he hit something like a 425 squat in the 242-pound class. And that might have been with knee sleeves. Yeah, he caught some flack for that. As a guy who'd been training for years, carrying that much body weight to come in and squat 425 in a comp. For someone who's supposed to be such a glute expert, yeah, he caught flack for that. Because the guy had a decent bench and everything else, which was really surprising. And I think that goes to show that all this focus on glute training, all this stuff he promotes, I think a little bit is him just trying to get in on a fad, him trying to do something trendy and different to make a name for himself. And I think that's a lot of what it is, because truth be told, I don't think all this additional glute training that people do is necessary. I think a focus on basic squats and deadlifts will do it. In fact, I go so far as to say anyone who focuses on doing a lot of pulling from the floor, is going to have tremendous glute development. They're going to have maximum glute development. Glutes are one of those muscles, if the overall context of your training is good and you're doing a lot of explosive or heavy athletic work, there's no reason your glutes should ever be a lagging muscle for you. And if they are, you're probably just not doing enough pulling from the floor, or you're not doing enough really deep squats. It's just that simple. That's the reality of it. Either one of those should build your glutes up. But yeah, I think the bigger focus on pulling from the floor and everything is going to be better than focusing on all these various glute bridges and stuff that Bret has people do. Because at the end of the day, that stuff just really isn't necessary. And it's kind of like you see all these women doing all this trendy glute stuff. And think about it in that same context. All these women do this trendy glute stuff and everything, and yet most of them who do tons of this work, they struggle to develop their glutes. But if they just did some deep ass to grass pause squats, a lot of those women start seeing additional glute development. And you see Bret and other people promoting all of this based on the context that, well, some people have glutes that aren't activating, glutes that aren't firing. That's just not true. People aren't using good technique on lifts. They're not deadlifting heavy off floor. Maybe they're doing too much bouncing on the deadlifts and touch and go. Maybe they need to throw in some power cleans. Maybe they need to switch over to pin lay rows. Believe it or not, a lot of people, when they first do pin lay rows who aren't used to it, notice their glutes actually work during that, because anything where you're pulling from the floor. But yeah, people who struggle with glute development, it's generally not because they aren't doing direct glute work. That's very, very rarely the problem. The problem is generally the way they're performing exercise or the amount of attention they're giving to exercises. People who squat high tend to struggle with glute development sometimes. Those are people with weak glutes. People who are squatting too high, they're not going to proper depth. And I don't care whether we're talking about low bar, high bar, front squats, all of those develop your glutes amazingly if you go deep enough, particularly if you start doing pause work. How about deadlifting? Yeah, they might do some high rep deadlifting, but then they bounce off the floor, they do touch and go. Well, maybe that's why their glutes are struggling to develop, because they're not actually doing the exercise correctly. If you reset on every rep and you do a lot of deadlifting, either heavy peak sets, or you do a lot of volume even with lighter weights, but you reset the weight every time off the floor, you're going to get tremendous glute development, probably maximum glute development. Anyone who's training athletically, doing all these deadlifts, power cleans, lots of work from the floor itself, those people don't have glute problems. It's training incorrectly and neglecting your posterior chain and things like, again, bouncing off the bottom on deadlifts, squatting too high. Those are the people who have glute development and glute strength problems, not people who train correctly. So it's kind of like a Band-Aid fix for bad training methods to focus extra work on the glutes. It really is. It's a trendy Band-Aid fix for people who just don't want to train correctly. When if they just trained correctly, we wouldn't need this fix to begin with. We wouldn't even be talking about it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.